I've talked a lot about lately in regards to my own personal shadow work around the nature of the fact that I feel as though the evidence is there for us to acknowledge that most of our experience in regards to our creation, our co creation with the unified field, with first cause source energy, comes from the free will of our subconscious, which in some ways is a paradox because the subconscious is beneath the waterline of our consciousness, which is about 5%. If you look at the iceberg analogy, if you have an iceberg in the water, the 5% above the water, or 10% above the water, more like 5%, shall we say, just for the um, sake of being correct. Above the water is the conscious mind, and the subconscious mind is 95% beneath the waterline, and that what we have beneath the waterline is what constitutes our creations and what we emanate into the unified field, hence what we experience in regards to our co-creation. But I left a very important part out of that aspect of that premise, and I was reminded of it yesterday by the brilliant Bernard Gunther from Veil of Reality YouTube channel and the Cosmic Matrix podcast with his wife Laura Matsu. And I know this very well, this particular topic very well, because I've lived my life with it. And even though I didn't bring it up in my videos talking about the nature of shadow work, it's really important that we come to terms with this aspect. And I think no one, in my perception, no one does it better and explains it better than Bernard Gunther on Veil of Reality. He does a very, very precise and a very powerful summation of what I'm about to share. His videos, for me, are the best of the best. When he makes a video, I tend to go to it and watch it because he is so clear. He's so well resourced in regards to the citations about information, where he gets his information from, which is really important for me moving forward. I'm not a cynic. I came into this whole spiritual awakening movement with my eyes completely open and my mind completely expanded to a point where I just took on everything. I was just like a sponge soaking everything up. But over the years of my conscious awakening experience, I've looked at more empirical evidence. I've looked at, which is my own personal experience, but also backed it up with information that I find through people that I trust, and then of course I research the shit out of it in order for my discernment levels to be able to actually to acknowledge whether it's true for me, right? It has meant truth for me. So, in regards to the process of creation, co-creation, there are other forces that can come in and also influence your ability to create and what you choose to create, through your emanations, your thought forms, through your manifestation processes, and what you magnetize into your life and bring into your life, what kind of experiences you bring into your life through people and through location. From a very young age, I was, and we all are to some level, but the volume gets turned down as we become more and more conditioned to see the world in a very different way. From a very young age, I was deeply psychic and interacted with levels of consciousness and reality beyond the frequency of our five senses. And I've had sleep paralysis a lot of my life. When I was very young, about 7 or 8, I had a lot of experiences with shadow beings. I've told a story before about the nature of a shadow being that stood over my cousin's bed, Darren's bed in Green Bay. I told that story a long time ago, and I woke up with sleep paralysis, top and tail in that bedroom with my head facing towards the door, and the shadow being standing in the doorway, looking over me as I lay in the bed, absolutely petrified. But what I'm going to relate to here is what Bernard talks about, the nature of entities that can attach themselves, good and bad, to our biofields and can influence our the way that we manifest reality, how we choose to co-create our realities. because it's really important to come to this place where we comprehend that there are forces that can attach themselves to our biofields, to our auric fields, to our consciousness, due to the nature of what we're magnetizing into our lives and what we're bringing into our lives. If we haven't got the level of protection, psychic protection around our biofields, we can get entities attached to us. I'm going to relate some stories, my own personal stories around this, around entity attachment and around influence through the use of alcohol and drugs, and of course through my own magnetizing these entities into my life due to the nature of who I was, what I was projecting out into the unified field, and what I was available for, because I had no boundaries, psychically, energetically, physically, mentally, spiritually, had no boundaries. For a long time, I certainly do now. I got very strong boundaries now, energetically, spiritually, mentally, physically. On every level, my boundaries are very strong and very powerful. But in regards to what he was talking about when he talked about in his video, which I might, if I get the chance to, I'll also post the link to that video that I watched. The nature of the entities that were attaching to me, that came and attached themselves to me in a negative sense, were always came through, in my experience, through violence, through fear, through drugs and alcohol. And I will relate to you now. My first experience, of course, I've talked about this before. My possession experience I had in Dunedin, living in the Octagon above Bacchus Wine Bar, that happened to me in the early 90s, where I was possessed by the disembodied spirit of a woman, of a prostitute that was in that flat that I was in at one point in the late 1800s. That particular flat I was living in above the Bacchus Wine Bar in the Octagon in Dunedin was a brothel. When I moved into that flat back in the early 90s, 1990s, 20th century, that flat was, the toilet would flush by itself all the time. And when I moved in there, it was $50 a week. It was cold. Most amazing flat in Dunedin I lived in, for sure, easily. And I said to the people that lived in the flat, John, I can't remember the other guy's name. There's two corporate guys that lived in the flat with us, me and my friend Scott, who moved in the flat with them. And I said to them, this is a story I've told before as well. I said to John and the other guy, what's the deal with the toilet? Why is it flushing all the time? And they said, oh, we think it's something wrong with the plumbing, or it could be haunted. And they laughed and they kind of brushed it off. And I was just like, well, this is interesting. Okay. So we thought nothing of it, but we're all the block of buildings around the block, Moray Place, and where we were on Lower Stewart Street in the Octagon itself, where we lived. The whole block of buildings were all adjoined to each other, and you could easily go through the roof cavity, through the ceiling cavity onto the roof, then climb across the top, all the buildings across the entire block quite easily. But all of us had whenever we went to lift up the manhole to go into the ceiling, all of us had this feeling of dread. The moment we lifted it up, we just drop it down again, and just, well, can't go up there. It just feels dreadful. There's this energy up there that doesn't feel right. So the story was, for me, this is in regards to the nature of my empirical experience of attachment and possession, more importantly. The story begins really for me in earnest one night when I came back from my bars to work out called Crossroads. I was dating this girl called Inez, and I gave her a call. But I got back from work, and this is back in the early 90s, so you had landlines, and our landline had a really long cord where you plugged into the wall. Plug the cord into the wall. This is old school. And the phone line, the jack line, would go all the way. It was a huge long line, so you could walk around the entire apartment and talk on the phone. Well, down the hallway at least, anyway. Take the phone into your room if you wanted to. But I was walking up and down the corridor with the phone, just whispering into the phone, because it was about 2:30 in the morning. And we're on the third floor, so the door leading into the apartment was a huge, heavy oak door. Oak or native timber, a super heavy door. So when you open it up into the stairwell going down to the Bacchus Wine Bar, then downstairs to the front door, you get out onto the Lower Stewart Street. And I came home on the phone to Inez, talking to her on the phone, just whispering in the phone, walking up and down the corridor next to my friend Scott, who was at the time I thought was out and about, still for our work at the Lone Star restaurant where I used to work, which is where I met him. And I was talking on the phone, just quietly whispering on the phone, walking up and down the hallway. And what happened was, I got to the near the door, turned around and walked back down the hallway, past my room. As I walked past the door, someone or something kicked the door from the outside so hard that if that kick had been on the inside of the door would have swung open so fast and would have smashed into the stairwell railing and would have knocked it all off. And I jumped literally out of my fucking skin. I was that fucking, it scared the shit out of me because it was so abrupt. And of course, it's 2:30 in the morning. I thought it was someone playing a joke, right? Like my friend Scott, who come back from the Lone Star, and snuck upstairs and heard me on the phone and thought I'd play a joke on me. So I put the phone down right away, open up the door to see who was there, and there's no one there. I go downstairs into the Bacchus wine bar. It closes at 12 midnight. This is 2.5 hours after it's been closed. Look inside, there's no one in there. No one's playing any jokes. No one's in there. I go downstairs to Lower Stewart Street. All happens within about 10 seconds. Down Lower Stewart Street, and no one can get down the fucking stairs fast enough. 3 flights of stairs without me seeing them leaving the building. I'm just hoping that there's someone, literally hoping there's someone there, because I know that this is not normal, and it's beginning to scare the shit out of me because I realise there's no one there. At least I can see no one, right? I'm getting goosebumps even telling this story right now. But I go downstairs to Lower Stewart Street. No one on. It's literally dead. It's Dunedin. 2:30 in the morning. There's no one there. No one there. No one there. No one around. I go up on the octagon. No one there. I come back to the phone, pick up the phone, and said, Inez, and there's this silence. I thought she'd gone. I thought she'd hung up. And then first thing she says to me is, "You've got to get out of that flat." And she didn't tell me until later when we were dating, about 4 months, that she was clairvoyant, clairaudient, and claircognizant, and deeply psychic. And she knew exactly what she was saying. You've got to get out of that flat. To cut a long story short, I ended up having a possession experience in that flat in the summer of 1993-4. So I know that there are forces that can take over your form. They can come into your biofield and take over your form and therefore influence your thoughts. Later, in the summer of the same summer, I went to pick apples in Motueka. I did it 3 seasons in a row in the early to mid 90s, and I met this girl called Valentina that year, who was beautiful. Who was from Christchurch but living in Motueka Valley over the summertime. Amazing, gorgeous woman, and about my age at the time. And we became good friends. I would see her around Motueka, Tasman region, Golden Bay all the time, hang out with her. And then 2 years later, in 1996, 97, that summer, I had an experience with her where we were going down the hill over, me and my girlfriend at the time and some friends of hers who owned a van. We're going down to Golden Bay for the weekend. And Annette and I were picking apples together. And we were going down the hill with her friends who were also picking apples in this van that she was working with as well. They all came to work with me eventually in Motueka Valley. We were going down the hill. And as we're going down the hill, I had this moment where I realized I had this intuitive ping. We're going to see Valentina in Takaka. And my friends in the van and my girlfriend go, "Who's Valentina?" I said, "This girl I know. I just know we're going to see her." So we get down to the bottom of the hill. And this is me tuning in energetically to what was going to happen next. But I had no idea on that. On a conscious level, I had no idea. But the empirical experience I had is one of those moments for me of passing through the eye of the needle to get empirical experience of what I'm talking about right now. So I can tell you, this is for real. This actually happens, and it's happening. It's happened a lot, and a lot of people in the world today are influenced by entities that are non-human and are non-physical, right? So to get this experience, to know it empirically, is part of my process of gnosis, of knowing. So I get down the hill with my friends. We arrive in Takaka. We go to the Wholemeal Cafe. We walk in the door, and there's Valentina looking at the food display cabinets. They're back towards us. I know it's her right away. Valentina. She turns around, and she's got this look on her face, like just completely glazed over, like she's just not there. She's not cognizant at all. She's just looking at and she's just blank. I'm like, fuck, what the fuck? I go to give her a hug. And as I'm hugging her, she puts her arms around me, and the moment she fucking does that, what I feel is this black, my best description is this: black wings unfurl, and they swoop around me and begin to pull in around me and begin to crush me. The moment I felt that, energetically, I let go. Whoa, what's going on, man? What's going on, Valentina? And she goes to me, I'm preparing for flight. I was like, okay. I go and buy some food, go at the back into the garden bar, all my friends are. It's a beautiful day. I go at the back. My friend Richard, German friend Richard, invites me to a party at his house in Birds Clearing that night, and all my friends are welcome. So I tell my friends, we're going to go to a party tonight, Birds Clearing. We go up to Birds Clearing, this party, and it was a fun party. There was lots of liquid acid around at the time. And what happened was, somehow, even though Richard didn't want her on his property, Valentina managed to find her way up to this party. And that night, and early the next morning, she had what you could say would be a breakdown. A complete breakdown. Not a nervous breakdown, but a psychic fracturing of her consciousness. And me and my friends, and some other friends of hers, took her outside because she was upsetting everyone in the party, and stood around her and did everything we possibly could to bring her back into her body again and back to a place of solace, back to a place of connection to us, because we loved her dearly, because she's a friend of ours. But for me, I wasn't strong enough psychically to be able to handle what was going on. I didn't have the strong boundaries. And the entities that were attached to her, because she had a Kundalini awakening, was completely blown open, with no ability to gauge how to protect herself, how to shave off these entities. What happened for her was that these entities were like, she must have had thousands of them in her biofield. Some of them attached to me. And I began to have these horrific thoughts, horrific memories, horrific experiences, all begin to percolate up into my conscious mind. And I knew what was going on right away. I knew what was happening. I knew that the entities that were attached to her were attaching to me. And what happened then for me was that I had to leave my friends to actually do the work on her, because I couldn't handle it. And my morning was a fucking mess. That morning when I was coming down off my acid trip, I was literally breaking down. I was a fucking mess. I was in tears. I was so upset. These entities were milking me. Energetically, psychically, spiritually, mentally, physically. Milking me of all my horrors of my childhood, my traumas, my pain. Unhealed wounds. Pull the scabs off. And then I had this moment of grace where I heard a voice, my clairaudient voice, my guardian angel, say to me, get to Ohoakebooks Springs and get in the fucking water now. So, true story, I end up getting my friends up out of their slumber. They're trying to sleep. I said, get up, we gotta go right now. This is like super early in the morning. I got them up, revved them all up. So we got to go to this place right now. And I got them to drive us down there to Ohoakebooks Springs. And I ran past all these Japanese tourists. There's a big bus of Japanese tourists at Ohoakebooks Springs, which is supposed to be some of the clearest water in the entire world. And you're not allowed to dive in the water. It's tapu. I did. So I ran past all these Japanese tourists, ripping my clothes off. I was naked by halfway along the trail. I ran down and I dove straight into the spring. And the moment I dove in, I felt all those entities were gone. Gone. I was clear of them all. The spring had cleansed me. I got out of the pool, out of the water. I felt absolutely exuberant. It wasn't just the coldness of the water and me being alive. It was the clearing, the energetic clearing. Years later, I had an experience with Dr. Emoto in Wellington, where he showed a slide of the Waikato Springs and the Petone spring water. The Petone spring water was a beautiful crystal, frozen crystal. And Waikato Springs, the crystal was distorted. And that's another story I've told before about the nature of what's going on underneath the Kahurangi National Park, underneath the mountains, and those lava tubes, in those caves. There's a nest, as my friend Ratu Aaron used to say, there's a nest of reptilian-like beings or entities living beneath the Kahurangi. That's a story I've told before. I'm not going to go there. But the nature of an entity attachment, how it can influence your thoughts, your feelings, your manifestations. It's a real thing. As I said before, Bernard Gunther does a really amazing job of citing, of explaining, of telling how these entities can affect your manifestations, and that comes along with the shadow work as well. Because when you have the level of self-inquiry and you set strong boundaries, often you can find yourself, when you know that there's something moving through you in order to manifest in that way, an experience that feeds them, most importantly, rather than helping you in any way. And therefore you become a battery. Now, I've had other experiences as well where I've invited in, because this is the situation with the more positive entities or positive connections with elementals and beings that are non-physical. You can also invite those beings, but the free will aspect means that you have to invite them in. You have to actually, there has to be a consent, and then the invitation is presented. Whereas in the other way, of course, silent acquiescence, when these entities, these nasty entities, the silent acquiescence and the lack of boundaries allows them to come in, right? It's also consensual when they come in and there's no resistance from you, your consciousness. That's a silent acquiescence, which is also plays itself out within the legal system, financial system, with all the layers of society. It's all about consent. It's always about consent. But the silent acquiescence, the non-resistance to their movement into your field of awareness, into your biofield, allows them to attach themselves to your biofield, allows them to milk you, allows them to predate on you. So when I invited in during one night, I was in a hotel, the Bayview Hotel, I think it is, in Wellington. I had my lover and I at the time, we decided to have an intimate experience and invite in the entities of these higher entities of love, light, truth, compassion, reverence, and devotion into our sexual experience. When we both decided to do this process and have us do this ritual and bring in these entities to also partake in our sexual connection, the level of induced awareness in regards to all the five senses was turned up enormously. Every touch was orgasmic. Every moment was deeply present. The love and the reverence we felt for each other, my lover and I at the time, when we were having this intimate experience, everything slowed down to a heartbeat, to a heartbeat. And the heartbeat was a collective heartbeat between her and I. And that energy flourished between us and brought us closer together. And it uplifted us and exhilarated us. But when the experience was over, these beings left. They didn't hang around, they left. And that was quite obvious to us, quite prescient for both of us to be able to acknowledge the fact that they had left us to our own devices after we had made love and we consummated our connection. They left us, and we were in this beautiful, glowing, energetic bubble of devotion and love and reverence for each other, lying together in bed and slept together, cuddling up. It was beautiful. So there's the positive aspect of my experience with that intimate aspect, and there's been other opportunities and other experiences I had in my life where I've invoked elementals in locations around the world. I've gone in with reverence and respect. For example, was into a forest, or into a glade, or into a natural location, and then of course, this is part of my process of entering into these locations often. I do tend to forget sometimes, but what I will do if I'm consciously aware enough, I'll go to a space, and I'll, at the threshold of the space I'm moving into, I'll ask the spirits, devas, and deities and elementals of this location for permission to move into that space, to move into that glade, into that forest, into that energetic main frequency location. Ask for permission first. So there's an interaction that takes place there, so that I know that I'm entering into their domain with full reverence and respect. And by doing that, it gives me a more safer opportunity to feel like I'm actually interacting with these beings with that sense of devotion and respect and reverence. They feel safe. I feel safe and protected. There's an energetic exchange that takes place, and by doing that, it also locks in this connection that when I re-enter that space again, they recognize my energy when I move there. And I've had a situation before at Kura Tawhiti. This is interesting. At Kura Tawhiti, which is Castle Hill in the Arthur's Pass, which is an incredible female dragon line portal. I've been there since 2017. Oh man, half a dozen times. More than that. Dozen times. About a dozen times. Since 2017, the March equinox of 2017 was my first time I ever went there. I've been wanting to go there for years. And then 2024, I went back there with my lover at the time, and I went up to the base of the area where the dragon line moves through in Kura Tawhiti. I asked the spirits, devas, and deities of this location if I have permission to walk onto the space. I'd been there at the beginning of the year, and it was audiently clear. You need not come any further. So I was told to fucking piss off. Not in any kind of hard way, but I was told, no, you don't need to come any further than this. It's her opportunity, and it's all about her. Let her walk on the land. You were here at the beginning of the year. You need not come any further. A kind and polite no. You're not welcome. So I walked back to my van and waited for Alia in my van for about 2 hours while she was up there having her own experience. So this is the nature of the energetic, in my perception, the nature of the energetic connection to the entities on the more heavier dark side, the shadow side, and also the light side. There is that interaction and the unseen, right? The unseen, because we decode, as David Icke says, the smallest amount of visible light in our perception, right? Turned down. The smallest, minute amount of frequency we can decode. But beyond that frequency, so much more. And that's where the nature of having strong boundaries, having reverence and devotion and connection, and also asking for permission, and also keeping, most importantly, your own biofields, your own energetic field strong when you are out in the world is so important. And to not consent to any energies attaching themselves to your biofield without, obviously without your permission first. Thanks for watching. I truly appreciate it. Matewa. I'll see you again soon.